With only weeks to plan, Randy reached out to the only missionary contact he had even heard of in the northern Iraq region, a friend of a friend named Fabian. When Randy first spoke with Fabian, he shared the vision he had been having about an event of 50 hours of prayer and worship in northern Iraq, and it turned out Fabian's team had already been having the same dream.
They said, we'd like to see 50 hours of nonstop worship and prayer in your city at the House of Prayer in Iraq. And they said, we want to help strengthen the prayer movement in Iraq. And I thought to myself, there isn't a prayer movement yet, but there's going to be one. So Randy came with a team from Fredericksburg, and that's when we did that first 50 hours.
So we land in northern Iraq in September, Feast of Tabernacles, September 2014. About 30 miles from ISIS headquarters, about a month after the invasion, and the city was overrun with 3 million plus displaced people. We found a little church that the house prayer leader there in Iraq had been working with, building relationship. Consequently, because of the refugee crisis, there was 7,500 refugees living in the church. So they were in our prayer meetings, these refugees from Mosul.
And they came to our city, and they had just lost everything. They've lost their homes, they've lost their businesses, they lost their car, they've lost family members. And as soon as they arrived, we had this 50 hours of worship and prayer, and we started, as in a lot of intercession.
And we go 50 hours nonstop with full worship teams. No exaggeration, from the first strum of the guitar that first night, the glory of God filled that room. And we lived under an open heaven for 50 hours in the middle of one of the most dangerous and chaotic crises in the earth.
And during the prayer meeting, these refugees were coming to listen and coming to watch as we were worshiping and praying.
Day 2, we're in the house of prayer, 100 refugees in the room. We're singing, we're prophesying, we're singing prophetically over the region of northern Iraq. All of a sudden, miracles start popping open. And it wasn't like, it wasn't, hey, let's do this slick altar call and, bam, bam, boom, boom. It was just in the presence of God, in the context of worship, God was moving. And the power goes out. What do we do? What should we do? And we kind of shrugged and said, why don't we just preach the gospel? I mean, these guys have been marinating in the presence of God for 24 hours now. I mean, let's see what happens.
And I stood before them and I preached the gospel to them. And they started raising their hands about wanting to give their life to Jesus. And I said, I need to explain this again to make it clear you understand what we're presenting to you.
If you want to follow Jesus as your Lord and the only way, he goes, stand to your feet. And every single person in the room stood up.
And I explained the gospel clearly. You're gonna follow Jesus, you're gonna lay your lives down for him. And they all started raising their hands, and we led them to a relationship with Jesus. And they said it's worth all the suffering and the loss we went through to experience and meet Jesus and have this life with him now.
And at that point, we're like, oh my gosh, we're in a holy moment. God is teaching us something about what happens when we put his presence, we make his presence the primary tool in outreach and evangelism. So I came back, 2014, and with our leadership team, we said, how can we train young adults, and then how can we send them to be a part of this story that God's unfolding, that God's already doing in the Middle East? Whatever that was, that's what we're gonna be doing till Jesus comes back. Whatever we just stumbled into is one of the strategies that God's gonna use to release the great harvest across the Muslim world.